One. Okay. Hey, hello, welcome. As announced, we are today to present to you our journey through the migration to the Unity catalog. So yeah, today I'm here with my two colleagues, Mateusz, Wujec, and Jacek Cieślak. Do not repeat myself. Yeah, they are presenting themselves right now. So let's dive straight into the meat of the presentation. So yeah, so let's start with what we were actually migrating. So our glorious platform Apex, which is basically all you can do with the data platform within the organization. So you want to do anything with the data, query, transform, create some model based on existing data within the organization, you go to the Apex. So it's quite important thing, let's say. It's based upon three main components. AWS as our main cloud provider, but we are also including other providers at the moment. But still the main one is the AWS. Databricks as the main presentable layer of the platform, I would say. And our self-service platforms, which are microservices used to allow self-management within the organization. So yeah, so this is our platform. And I mentioned Unity Catalog. And what Unity Catalog is, it's actually not only Databricks bound. It's, as far as I know, open source project actually. But in our context, it's a feature within the Databricks that allows the improved data governance. This is one of the features. The other one is the fine-grained access control up until the details of the column or the row even, which is quite a nice feature. And also the automated data lineage, which is quite important for the last reason that we decided to roll out the Unity catalog within the Apex platform. So there is a piece of legislation which is named BCBS 239. It's really easily roll out your tongue, to be fair. And what it is a piece of legislation that it's related to the risk assessment within the banks and other financial organizations. And basically, as a bank, to some degree, we need to be compliant with it. And for that, of course, all of the features within the organization are quite important, and all the features of the Unity catalog are very handy to go with that. But one of the most important is the automated data lineage. But this is a very high view, bird-eye overview of the process of the migration. And I think quite important is also the more detailed view, technical view, which can be presented by my colleague Mateusz. So let's hear data engineering perspective from him. Yeah.
Hello, welcome. My name is Mateusz. I'm a data engineer in compliance reporting team. As discussed, Robert already talked about what the Unity catalog actually is. I would like to focus a bit more on what it means for an engineer or data analyst, what it changes, and how it improves the quality of life of data engineers. But in order to do that, let's shift maybe a bit back in time, so to the pre-Unity catalog era. And I think that this picture really well describes the state of our Databricks environments at that point, where this whole maze is all of the schemas, all the objects, views, tables, and the Pac-Man is data engineer trying to find the right table for the right use case and somehow get the permissions to use this data. So more about the setup, we would have a central metastore across the whole account. And each team had its own workspace that they were working on. So the first problem was that the data was distributed. So in case we as compliance reporting team wanted to use the data from the AML team, we would have to raise a DevOps ticket, wait for a couple of hours, maybe days, create the groups, and so on. So this whole thing was very time consuming because what if you wanted to just perform a very quick ad hoc analysis for someone from the higher ups, right? It was not that smooth. Another thing was that there was a lack of consistency in the data storage. So every team had its own vision of how the data should be structured, how the naming conventions should look like, where the data should be laid, and how organized it should be. So over the time, this became a mess, right? And that's when the Unity catalog came into play. Yep. So after the migration, we have still one metastore per account, but everything is better organized, right? We have a hierarchy of catalogs, workspaces, and groups. So now, instead of creating them on our own, we have separate catalog for development purposes, separate for staging and data in raw format, separate for production, and then maybe some additional catalogs for business users. Everything is bound with groups. And the first improvement of the Unity catalog is that we no longer have to raise those DevOps tickets anymore. All the access to the data can be done within SQL. So if we want to share the data with our colleagues from AML team, it's just a matter of writing a SQL-like statement at the very end of the pipeline, and the team can work on our data right away, right? But this is not the only improvement that we have seen with Unity Catalog. The next one is the data lineage and auditing. So before, there was a data lineage to some extent in Databricks. Namely, this was only within one DLT pipeline. So if you were creating DLT, you knew what columns you were taking, what was the source, and so on and so on. But this was only within one DLT pipeline. And probably, as you can imagine, the processes are a bit more complicated than just one DLT, right? So now we don't have to go through the logs. We don't have to talk with multiple developers on, hey, what this table is being pulled from, what are the dependencies. Everything is nicely presented in a diagram so that in case of any change request or any bug, it is much easier to trace back what is the source of the issue, right? Another thing are the activity logs, which are finally available to developers. So I can see two use cases for that. First, we can have a look at our tables and see which of those are maybe not used anymore, right? We are creating pipelines. We have some maybe imaginations about how it is being used, but we can now go through the activity logs and check that maybe some of the tables are not that used anymore. Maybe it is time to finally retire them, right? Or maybe the other way around. Maybe there are tables which are having increasing amount of users, and maybe it is time to finally start thinking about the optimization of the querying experience, right? And another thing, which was more for business users, I would say, is the easier data discovery. So now if you want to have some transaction data set, you can just type this within the Unity catalog, and all of the tables that are on transactions, or maybe reference some transactions, or maybe have some data joined from the transactions data, will pop up. So instead of going through the developers and asking every couple of days, hey, where is the data for transactions, right? It's not going to happen anymore. They can just search for themselves. And the last thing, which I find very cool from the Databricks side, is the role level security and data masking. So we, as Raiffeisen, we are in multiple countries. We call them org units. And all the countries are giving us their data within one standard format, right? So at the very end, if we have a customer table, it ends up in one big table from all the different org units. But here is the problem. Not necessarily we want to show the data from our Croatian friends, the data from Kosovo, let's say, right? It's pointless, probably. So in order to give access to only people that are related to a given work unit, what we used to do was to create some dynamic views on top of this one big table. So at the very end, we would have one big table and then 10 to 15 additional ones, which are just filtered org units data. So this meant a much more maintenance for the data engineers. If there was some issue with the underlying data, we would have the issue with those dynamic views as well, right? And then the row-level security came in. And right now, we can just create a SQL-based filters to connect our groups with the right, let's say, rows in the data. And this way, we can have just one big table, but people from Croatia are going to see data from Croatia only. So this means much less maintenance from our side, and the whole process is much less complicated. And then there is dynamic column masking. So as a bank, we have a lot of personal informations. And also not necessarily we want to show all of this to our data analysts or data engineers or people that don't have enough accesses. So what we used to do was to create a custom script. And on top of our tables, we would create the copies of our tables with anonymized data and then expose it to the users. Right now, this is not needed anymore as well. What we can do is set a UDF that is going to anonymize all of the data that we have tagged as personal information. So this way, if there is a data analyst with not enough privileges to show to view the data, he's going just to see a bunch of asterisks instead of your social security number or IBANs, right? So all of this changes that Unity Catalog is introducing are quality of life changes for developers. And I'm pretty sure that we haven't covered like half of the additional features, and we are going to work on them as well. So now back to Robert. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mateusz. Okay, so back to my beautiful face. So, so we have seen the perspective of the data engineer, but let's return to the platform for a little bit. Because we are migrating to something, it means that we need to migrate from something. So, of course, to some degree, we already implemented required features like lineage or the data governance, but it was not like after the rollout of the Unity Catalog, we can abandon our legacy solutions. So we need to think about impact of the Unity Catalog to our new solutions. So we sit down and start asking ourselves questions regarding the potential problems with the Unity rollout. For example, if you do anything with Databricks, you probably know that if you try to use something related to the account level things, you need to use the account level API. And the opposite is true for the workspace level. And Unity Catalog requires usage of the account level groups, which is changed from our previous setup, where we are actually basing our user management on the workspace level groups. This, of course, requires changes in our middleware or our microservices for the management. So because of that, there are quite a lot of these questions, which actually resulted in quite prolonged list. So what you can see now is actually the shortened version of the shortened version of the shortened version of the document, which aggregated all of the potential impact points within our platform after the Unity rollout. So of course, we have questions, we need to answer them. So it's only the thing about finding engineering answers to the stated problems. And as you all know, probably, finding answers to the engineering problems is always a very easy thing. It's never a problem. So we started our engineering. So let's talk about process of developing a process, which is mouthful, but yeah, this is what we started because we had quite a lot of impact points, so we needed to make sure that nothing will be destroyed by our rollout. So, of course, first step, tool assembly and process assembly. We try to find tools that can leverage our team skills as much as possible and automate the process as much as possible. Then we use our dev environment, which we try to strip down as much as possible every time, because as you may observe, it's a cycle, which means that we needed to repeat this process quite a few times. So after trying to assess the process on the existing dev environment, strip it down as much as possible, of course, we always had a great success without any possible problems. And from that flawless run, we gathered the bugs, problems, and all the things that could make more problems in the futures. And we repeated the cycle. So after repeating this tedious cycle quite a few times, we actually got quite good with it. So maintenance window for the rollout per workspace become around 2 hours. We know from our other friendly companies that when they tried to do something like this, it was actually more about 20 hours. Of course, it also, the main reason could be the difference between our management of the workspaces, but nevertheless, it was quite okay. But then another question appeared and become obvious, because 2 hour maintenance window, it's still 2 hour maintenance window. And if we decide randomly to migrate one of our existing workspaces without consulting with the end users, we could actually have a quite big negative impact on that. You can imagine, for example, that some very smart data scientist decides to do model training for 2 weeks, and then we appear and randomly interrupt this process by doing rollout of the Unity catalog, which is a great feature, but I think it could be impactful in a bad way for 2-week-long processing on Spark cluster. So yeah, so to avoid this chaos, we needed captain, and in that role was our SM team, represented today by Jacek. So Jacek, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Robert. So, service managers, it's our role and basically our perspective. What did we do to organize all this chaos and come up, successful? So basically, a lot of communication was required, right, to inform everyone, users, workspace owners, everybody, what was going on before we even started. So workspace owners were informed about proposals for the rollout, right? But as you know, everybody has planned something for their own projects, etc., like Robert mentioned, data scientists, whatever. So they sometimes need to change the date, right? So basically this game of ping pong was really often. But once they decided at last what was the date, we could send user notifications. And I can tell you we have over 1,500 users and over 150 workspaces. So you can imagine quite a lot of emails are flying. But once we set a date, on the same date of real rollout, we sent a final reminder, basically giving them a last warning, really please don't use this workspace, because we're gonna break something for you, and you ain't gonna be happy, right? And finally, once the rollout was done, we sent last email that they could basically come back to work, do their own, return to their project, etc. But it seems like the end of journey, right? So it seems, but not really, because as you know, even post-rollouts incidents can happen. And in our cases, we had quite a few, but how we managed to inform everyone about incidents, I will tell you a little bit later. Templates are your friends, and I really recommend to prepare upfront for everything, to have for the reminders, for the reconfirmations, etc. Some macro scripting, and this can be really nice and smooth. And once something is done, we can of course confirm. And like I mentioned, a lot of users times a lot of workspaces can generate really a lot of traffic. And we are only few, so it can take your all time, and really this rollout wouldn't be successful in only 3 months. But what about best practices, and what did we do to achieve this fantastic success? Basically, we supported our DevOps teams, colleagues here, with 4 eyes principle. We watch their backs, basically, because we don't have 1 million engineers and guys in service managers team to do everything on their own. We had to collaborate, split teams, and basically, like you saw the beautiful calendar on the first slide, to try to squeeze in as much of rollouts every day. And once users, of course, as you know, you send them emails, but like the old joke goes, the admin joke, I saw the email, but I don't really read emails. So we had this issue that they thought they had incidents, but really there were not incidents. What it was really, it was basically something either ongoing, or something that they thought it was connected to the rollout, because we did rollout in the same time, right? So it must be the rollout. You broke something for us, right? So usually, actually 100% it wasn't. And what we do after post-rollout, right? Because of course post-rollout they can say, oh, but it's probably also connected to the Unity rollout. You did something, you changed something for me. And of course it wasn't true. So we had to support them, give them guidance, because something's changed, especially some information about sharing, how to use different things, and to connect the dots. So we had to guide them again. So still a lot of emails, a lot of communication on the teams, and then of course everything that was going into us, basically fake incidents, you had to analyze, determine, figure out, and point out that this was not really an incident. It was something else, or fake one. But what did we achieve in the end? To sum it up, over 150 workspaces in 3 months, 0 incidents. I can tell you a lot of coffees, because we stayed really long time. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. And if anybody has questions, we are happy to answer in more detail, as this was quite high-level stuff.
Thank you, Jacek, Mateusz, and Robert, Raiffeisen Tech team. Big, does anyone have any questions for the team? A lot of you is here, so maybe some thoughts, comments, yes?
Hey, thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One is, when moving into Unity Catalog, what do you think is missing there, a feature that you think would be great, but it's not there? That's the first question. And the second question is a little more technical. So when you do dynamic filters, row masking, column masking, and how does it scale? So if we have 100 groups, one table, and people from different groups start to query that table, do you see that there's an impact because there are so many groups and so many rules that the query needs to go through that it impacts the query time? Thank you.
Sure. So let's start with the second question. We haven't seen any impact, to be honest. But I think even if so, it wouldn't be a case of the optimization or not scaling of the UDFs and data masking. If any issues would arise, I would say that these were from the table optimization point of view. So we are always clustering the tables and deordering, vacuuming them. And we haven't seen any performance issues. Although, yeah, maybe it's time to do some kind of comparison how it is going to scale. On this first question, to be honest, nothing major. I think maybe the data discovery could be a bit better. Sometimes it is kind of not responsive as we would like it to be. But overall, I think it's a complete product.
Thank you. Someone here was...
Hello, I have a small question about the 2-week training on the Spark cluster. Did actually interruption happen, or it was purely hypothetical?
It was purely, not purely hypothetical, because just before the Unity catalog rollout, I actually did prolonged processing. It was not 2 weeks, it was just 2 days. But yeah, kind of hyperbole.
More questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. You can all support our speakers, so please leave your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ransky.